Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people still wearing knee-high socks with shorts. I'm your host, Dan Roberts, and today I'm joined by author Tyler Kirk. Tyler is the author of The Arsonist, the first book in his Children of Strife series. In the realms of light, a dark rot spreads beneath a veneer of beauty. The arsonist, masked, elusive, and feared, leaves a trail of destruction in his wake. To some, he is a menace, to others, a shadow of salvation. As fiends ravage the land and ancient powers stir, the fates of four souls become inextricably bound to his. Reese, Lila, Thaniel, and Bregan will each grapple with their own demons, unaware that their paths are destined to cross in the most unexpected of ways. In this grim world where nothing is what it seems, survival is uncertain, and the line between ally and enemy is ever shifting. Tyler, I'm excited. Welcome to the Dadlet Pod.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. But you made that whole intro with the book sound way cooler than how I imagined it would sound when I wrote it. That was good. Yeah,
I
no,
once
thank you for
had,
having me.
you're welcome. I once had dreams of being the guy who reads the things in the trailers, but I can't smoke cigarettes, so I could never get my voice to like the cigarette throaty goodness that's required. But yes, I'm very excited to have you on, and I should note that you are a dadlit double threat, a dadlit reader and a dadlit writer, and that you are also a dog dad, that you have a dog, and I like that.
Three dogs.
Three dogs.
Yeah, and two of them,
Whose
well,
idea was that?
my wife's.
No,
I
he says.
Yeah, we've got three, and one of them doesn't have front legs, but she's adorable. She kind of scoots around.
One of them doesn't have front legs.
Yeah, so two of the three dogs are brother and sister. They're Chiweenies that were born disabled, and then they were left abandoned as puppies in a box in an alley in downtown Spokane. It sounds like something out of a movie, I know, but
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. From what I know of the dog rescuing population, a dog without front legs is actually worth three times as much as just a normal dog with front legs.
don't tell that to the
Uh,
dog rescue place that I got them from because they basically gave them to me for free.
That's
They,
the
yeah.
the desire to have a wonderful adopted rescue dog of special needs in where I live in DC. There would be people fighting for that dog, fisticuffs.
Wow. Yeah, well,
Yes,
these dogs were like basically on death row. They were going to euthanize them. Nobody wanted to adopt them.
that's
Uh,
terrible.
I know. They're so adorable, and they're brother and sister. They're Chiweenies. They're a Chihuahua Wiener dog mix, and the brother was born without front paws, but he has legs. And then the sister, she just doesn't have front legs. She just got like completely no front legs.
So wait, how did well look, we're going to get to important literary matters as
Of,
soon
of
as
course,
this
of
is
course.
explained. Okay. So what does she have, like wheels up front?
When we got her, we started a GoFundMe to get everything we needed to build her a wheelchair, like a doggy wheelchair, and
Yeah,
it
but like
worked.
an up front wheelchair
Yeah, she like pushes
is going to
it
have
with her
to be
back
on
leg.
like a
She's rear
yeah.
wheel drive.
Yeah.
Well, we did
Yeah.
that, and it didn't. She hated it.
Yeah.
So she prefers to just sort of scoot herself with her back legs, and she hops sometimes. It's kind of like a bunny rabbit.
That's wildly impressive.
It's impressive, but when people see it in person first time, they think it's very weird.
Yeah, I can see that. I would
Yeah,
agree. It's
it's it,
probably very
and then
weird.
her brother, like I said, he has front legs, but he's got no front paws. so he kind of like it looks like he's always having to like tippy toe because it hurts to walk on hard
Oh
ground without,
no.
because it's just like, I mean, if you can imagine, no hand on your arm,
Yeah.
you're just
It's basically
walking on
just
like it.
bone.
Yeah,
Bone on the ground.
basically, it's so sad. But we take really good care of them. They're spoiled to death by us and our families, and
So there's no I would think if you were looking for like this is just interesting from a dad conceptual perspective, because I would immediately think that there would be some sort of prosthetic paw option
we've tried that.
for. Oh, you've tried that.
We've got him like little shoes, like little booties that he puts. He hates them. He like tries to chew them
Yeah.
off. I don't.
Oh, okay.
They
Okay.
apparently like the pain. I don't know.
This is actually Tyler, you've ruined this podcast because now I'm going to want to know all about this, and I'm not going to be able to move on conceptually because I'm going to want to think this through. So I don't know if you've listened to the pod, but I have a handicapped parrot whose name is Keeley, and he's an Indian ringneck parakeet, and he only has one wing. And
Oh,
so Keeley is a very he's a renegade. I'm gonna say he has attempted at every turn to just dive into the sweet embrace of death. Whether it's is there medication left out? Can I get up in somebody else's space? I'd like to fall off this thing. Oh, that's something that I shouldn't eat. And then finally, the wing injury that he suffered, and I think the correct description is a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. Just a just falling off things all the time and creating mayhem. And I bring this up because he is the one who ate the J key off my keyboard on my computer. And he's the reason why I never name characters like John or Jeff, because I do not have a functioning J key on my home computer.
that's kind of funny.
And but he is much beloved. He's much beloved. His medical bills cost well beyond what the price of an Indian ringneck parakeet is. And trying to trying to just describe, like, I would probably have a vacation home if I didn't have Keeley the parrot in my house.
Yeah.
That's how much he costs, and we insured him. Believe it or not, we insured him, and I was so shocked that we were not thrown off the insurance for Keeley the parrot. I apologize. None of this is literary
Oh, it's
related, but I
fascinating though.
thought I thought it might be an interesting conversation. So let us talk about the arsonist. So tell me about the arsonist. Where'd the arsonist come from? What inspired the arsonist? Where 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 is the arsonist going? And where could we get the arsonist?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Arsonist book itself came from a short story character piece that just kind of came to me when I was trying to find ways to stay entertained and awake in the Navy on a submarine. Um,
Nice.
I
Oh, we're
came
gonna
up
come
with
back to that, by the way.
that.
We're
Yeah,
definitely coming
absolutely.
back to that.
Well,
Whatever you're
I
allowed to tell us about it, we'll come back to.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just, when you're on a submarine and it's you find ways to entertain yourself, especially when you're being forced to do things that are really mind numbing. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know, it just kind of came to me one day. I always carry around a notebook, so I just started kind of jotting down ideas. My creative process is pretty much almost always start with a character before anything else.
Yep.
So this like arsonist character kind of came to me. I don't want to say like it came to me in my dreams, but I did wake up and like kind of have this idea, and uh, it just kind of stuck with me for years. And I developed this short story, and then I got to eventually went to college to talk, focus on writing, and did a lot of short story writing and workshopping, and people seemed to really like the character, and I
Hmm.
seemed to really like it enough to where it was kind of like I kind of want to explore more of this.
Yep.
Um, like, does this have to be limited to a short story that's only like 15 pages long, or can this be more? Um, and so that's kind of where that origin story of the book came from. And I guess even the character is the arsonist. Obviously, he is definitely a little bit he's an enigma even to me as a writer. um because I just start to describe him, and I have a lot of people, they're like, oh, it sounds like he's an anti-hero. I don't like throwing around the term anti-hero, or the label rather. I think it's really overused nowadays in pop culture, and
Hmm.
it tends to define really boring characters to me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that all anti-heroes are boring. So anyone listening that's going to get mad at me,
I mean, you would be definitively wrong because, of course,
yeah.
Mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy Renner is about an anti-hero.
Yeah,
And
they're
that's not
good
boring
ones.
at all. That's a thrilling
There are
story.
good
Yeah.
ones, but I mean like across multiple forms of media today, or
Yeah.
rather entertainment mediums, antiheroes are used excessively, and I believe my hot take on this is I think it's used out of laziness personally, because the
Hmm.
writers creating these characters, they don't have to align, they don't have to like take a stance. Like I feel that when you write a villain or a hero, you have to take a stance with that character when you're writing them. Like, this
Yeah.
is them. This is a hard line drawn in the sand, right? Like, you look at characters like Batman, right? Batman does not use guns. Like, that is like a hard thing driven into his character. Right? If Batman were an anti-hero, it could be like, I never use guns, but in this case, like, there's like
Yeah.
this sort of like there's
Yeah,
exception.
he'd be Peacemaker.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'd be
yeah, like
Peacemaker. Peace at any cost.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
anti-heroes are interesting when there's like one of them, but when I've read a lot of books lately they're just filled with them. And
Yeah.
it's hard to know who to root for, or to really get to know a character, because you're like, well, he's so morally gray and anti-hero like that he could just decide to change his mind in 2 chapters on how he really feels about murder or something, right? So
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I wouldn't say the arsonist is an anti-hero. I would honestly say that he's a misunderstood hero. I
Nice.
guess for the simplest way I could put how I see
I
it,
mean, I mean,
but it's
he's
open to interpretation.
I think I was joking with you that arson is a sexual crime. Uh so I'm assuming. Well, my father's a criminal defense attorney and he was district attorney. So he's prosecuted a bunch of arson cases. And the thing that he came back with was that, and as he explained it to me, he goes, arson is a sexual crime. And I said, well, that seems bizarre because they're lighting something on fire. And he goes, yeah, it is bizarre. But believe it or not, that is what sort of instigates the thing.
Interesting.
So would you say I'm going to assume, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me, that your arsonist is not doing it for sexual satisfaction.
No, in fact, for all we know, he might not even be committing actual arson, right?
Really? Oh, well,
I mean,
now you've got me. You've got
I
me
mean,
hooked.
it's a strange, it's a title, but it's not really a positive one. Like,
No,
to
no, it's
be
actually a
called an
very bad one.
arsonist is
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
Uh,
pretty harsh thing to label somebody as.
yeah, we frown
So
on that.
yeah, so I mean, for all we know, he might not even be performing acts of arson.
Yes. I want to talk about this anti-hero hero thing
Of
because
course.
I'm incredibly interested in the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
And I say that because the fantasy genre, I think, has mm, th- it's exploded
Yeah.
in the
Big
literary
time.
field. My wife reads romantasy, which I think is fascinating because it doesn't do anything for me, but she really enjoys it. She just likes it. She thinks it's terrific, and I think that's great for her. I have read Tolkien and I've read Germ or George R. R. Martin. And George R. R. Martin's interesting to me because he's subversive more than he is what's called grim dark,
Yeah.
or as if to suggest that there's sort of a realm where all things are nihilistic and everyone is headed towards oblivion. It's The Witcher, I think, is also a little subversive, but has a lot of traditional fantasy tropes
It's
and
got a lot of
heroic.
folktale stuff in it.
It has a lot of folktale stuff. It's challenging in that it presents particularly an aim to understand what you're about to kill so
Yes.
that you don't kill the wrong thing. So
Yeah.
whenever they do something interesting, I feel like that's what The Witcher is doing.
Hmm.
So I'm always interested in the direction of fantasy conceptually and whether or not it has limitations. And so I'm interested in your character of the arsonist as a what you're describing as a complex person that might be doing something or might not be doing something. And from the description or the synopsis of your book, it sounds like there are four characters that are going to tell us the story of the arsonist. Is that correct?
Yes. More or less. I mean, it's funny that you brought up Sapkowski's work, The Witcher, and then Gurm, George R. R. Martin's
Yeah.
Song of Ice and Fire, because uh, those were the two fantasy series that I read going into the Navy, and then while in the Navy, and even finishing both of them as I got out, at least the books that were out at the time. And
Yeah.
I definitely, I would be lying if I said they didn't influence.
Oh,
If
they've
it didn't
influenced me as
impact.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've had people, and I'm not saying this to anyone that's listening. I'm not trying to overhype and sell my book. I'm not,
No,
but
no, no. You should overhype and sell your book.
but
That's why you're here.
I have had people point out comparisons, not like, oh, this reminded me of The Witcher, or this reminded me of Game of Thrones. I've had people make those comparisons, and even to other things that we didn't mention. Like I had people bring up the style of the writing to that of like the Ranger's Apprentice, or
Yeah.
something along those lines. The book, in terms of like its layout, is very, very heavily inspired by George R. R. Martin. I
Yeah.
loved the way he set up character POVs, where this chapter's this character, and this chapter's this character. I definitely did that with this book. I tried to do my own take on it, though. I tried to do my own little creative spin on how you could play around with that idea. Um, but you do have the book, starts off with a brief prologue, and the first chapter that follows and introduces this arsonist character, and then you're immediately taken into a chapter with Reese. Um, and then you think you're going to go back to the arsonist, and you get a chapter all of a sudden with Bragan. And then you think you're going to go back again. No, now here's a chapter with Thaniel. And then you get a chapter with Lila, and then it restarts and you go back to the arsonist. So there's this
Yeah.
sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of pattern throughout the book. And it's a 40 chapter long book. it's a short read though. Despite this pattern and this length, it's sitting at I think 266 pages.
Yep.
It's a short, quick read. But that formula of like, all right, this is a like when you turn the page and it's a Thaniel chapter or a Bragan chapter, you're like, okay, you know what you're getting yourself into. I really liked that because there were with the Game of Thrones books, like if you read
Yep.
the first book, I really liked knowing what I was getting myself into, I guess. Like if there was a character I really liked and I got to one of their chapters, is like, oh, I'm too tired for this tonight. I want to like really be awake. I'm gonna come back. I'll read this tomorrow. I'm gonna stop here. Or, like it kind of like basically it sort of organizes, almost like color coordinates the characters. And I feel like I've asked for people's feedback on this. Almost every person that's told me they read the book, I asked them what they think about it. Everyone's liked it.
Yep.
I've seen someone point out, I've seen two people that have left Amazon reviews point out that it was confusing at first and uncomfortable at first for them because they're thinking like, well, the book's called The Arsonist, but I'm like 60 pages deep and I'm reading about Lila. Like what does this have to do with this guy? And it can be a little confusing, but then if they then go on to say like, I stuck with it though, and then it made sense, kind of like
Yes.
I had someone bring up it was really cool. He's more of like a friend now, but at the time he was just a stranger, but now we're friends. He brought up the comparison like Quentin Tarantino, old style
Yeah. Yeah.
Quentin
Pulp
Tarantino movies
Fiction.
where, yeah, like you've got
Yeah.
all these different characters and they got their different stories going on, and then all of a sudden there's this like, oh, they're all in the same movie, like like um, so there's definitely that. And the Witcher thing was definitely influential, not in terms of content, like there's no elves or ancient eldritch monsters from other planets or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's but the thing about The Witcher that I was definitely inspired by or moved by, um was I thought it was really cool how Sapkowski took this very high fantasy type of story, and he took a lot of like Eastern European like folklore,
Yeah.
and he somehow created a series that is really just about people. Like I joke with my wife because she likes the Witcher books that
Mhm.
if you read Geralt and Yennefer's relationship in the books, it's literally Ross and Rachel from Friends. Like it to me anyway. Like it's a book series about people, and I thought that was cool. Where it's like you've got this dark, gritty fantasy, like, but it's really just a story about relationships, people,
Yeah.
and um, I liked that element. So I wanted to explore that myself. Like I created this character in this world, and it was dark and gothic and very Western European influence in terms of like, lore, terrain, and stuff like that. And definitely some North American influences too. But I was kind of curious, like, what could I do with that kind of concept? Like if I took that approach, could I make a story? And that was my most liked review I got on Amazon. Was towards the end, one of the first reviews I got towards the end of the first release. Someone pointed out that this story to them was more about people than like monsters, and
Yeah.
that is still to this day, as of right now, on the May 9th, 2025. That was my favorite review I got because it was just like somebody got it. One in like however many people out there in the world, somebody got that what I was trying to do, and they resonated. And for those who didn't, it's okay. I'm not like disappointed. Maybe I didn't do as good
Yes.
of a job, right? Maybe this one person was the only one that got it. But I
You hurt Tyler's feelings, people, if you don't get it.
well, and it's not. I'm
Tyler
not.
worked very hard and you didn't get it, and you need to reread it and buy one
Well,
for your friend.
Well, and I'm not just saying, I'm not giving away the whole point of the book of like, oh, so it's a book about an arsonist and people. Like, no,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is a lot of other things that people have gotten out of it, and there was a lot of other types of intent put into it. But I'm talking purely like writer talk right now. Like I'm talking about like my
Yeah.
approach, my inspiration, my ideas. I'm not giving away the plot of the book, but it was cool that someone brought it up is because their review was something kind of like I was reading this book expecting there to be a story about a hero, chosen one with adventure and monsters, and I got a book about people trying to survive a really bleak environment.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really cool as the writer, right? I mean, because I know that once this book's out, it's no longer mine. People are going to read it. They're going to take what they want from it. Um, but it was cool that like some of my intent hit the bullseye on the dartboard with somebody, right?
Yeah.
So that was cool. So yeah, I mean, The Witcher and A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, I would be totally lying through my teeth if I said they didn't impact me. Because like I said, it was the freshest thing I had read when I
Yeah.
started writing this. Um, and it was such a big, they were both such big pop culture references, right?
Oh,
Because
it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable.
when I started writing this at the time, you had, I mean, the Witcher video game, the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt video game was so big, right? It was so popular. Game of the year, it was everywhere. They were talking about the show that they were going to start developing on Netflix with Henry Cavill at the time. Game of
Yeah.
Thrones was Game of Thrones had season 7. They were in the process of making 8. Like we were at like
Yes. And yeah.
pivotal point, right? Like the peak. Um, so they definitely had like a cultural impact on me, even if I wasn't reading the books fresh at the time. It was just everywhere. It was hard to avoid as an influence.
Oh yeah. No. I look, I'm usually I write from the perspective of one person when I write my novels, or if I'll have dueling perspectives or something like that. But it's all heavily influenced by two authors or three authors, Steinbeck, George
Love
R.
him.
R. Martin, and Stephen King. Uh,
Oh
the
yeah, those are
way
all
that
great.
the way that the way that those authors structure chapters and books from multiple perspectives, uh, to me, are very good ways to tell a story. And to tell a story not just about a person, but to tell a story about an event. And because I'm a professional historian, I'm very attuned to the idea that events are experienced from multiple perspectives and that those perspectives are colored by an individual's what an individual experiences or knows or understands about reality.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I think that, well, Steinbeck, I just love the idea of giving us the setting and then letting the characters play as if in a play or in a, something like that. Um, uh, King, my favorite thing about him is the idea of sort of um, cracks in civilization. This idea
Yes.
that civilization has these cracks, and the cracks go from one person to the other person to the other person, and that the cracks are all tied together. And I think that that is that's what I've taken from him when I write something. And then of course George bring up Faulkner and the, you know, a person against themselves or the sense of duty. And in addition to that, his sort of idea of the propulsive story. This I'm gonna show you a character. I'm gonna show you an action, and then I'm going to show you immediately how it influences another character. And
Yes.
he just pops like that. Everything is always popping. Everyone is always working against one another. And uh, to that extent, in something like epic fiction, you that is such an involved thing and such a massive thing. And you and I were talking about this before about why George hasn't finished the book. And I got my copy of A Dance with Dragons signed by him the day he released it, all those years ago
Oh my
in
gosh.
Natick, Massachusetts. And I think that's just incredibly hard. It's a little easier when you're just doing one book and you're popping through and you have a max page or a
Yeah.
max word count of 100,000 words. So yeah, no, I completely empathize with that as an idea. And it's that's a great system to model on. Particularly when you're wanting to do the show don't tell thing
Yeah.
and make that happen. But I'm going to ask you, you're selling books. Describe your marketing strategy to me, other than coming on the Dad Lit pod with my 8 listeners.
My marketing strategy could probably be a lot better. Have I would love to use the excuse that I am really strapped for time because I don't get to do this for a living. I
Yeah.
think if I could, it would be a much different. I'd be like Tom Cruise jumping out of planes with a banner in my hand, like buy my book, like um I try less to market the book and more market myself
Yeah.
because I think people are more likely to give my book a chance if they give me a chance.
Hmm.
Um, my my marketing on social media has always been as transparent and sincere and honest as I can be without just completely violating all of my privacy. I
So you'll be
like, hey
posting
guys, I'm
pictures.
taking a shower. Read my
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Like
Would you
I
like to look at pictures of my colonoscopy? Yes,
exactly,
yeah. No, we
exactly.
don't need that. Tyler, I'm going
Yeah,
to be honest. You can sell your book without pictures of your colonoscopy. But
I
yes,
I'm glad you told me because that I was gonna ask when we got to the end what you thought of. That was gonna be my next pitch. Like, hey, what would you rather look at, this or my book? Pick the book up, or but
God,
it,
I hope it's your book.
I try with the like I just try to basically on social media, like it's different depending on the platform. Like on X, I try to just focus on relationships, like genuinely. Like
Yeah.
I don't try to tell people what they want to hear or befriend people because I'm like, okay, now check out my book. There's been people that you could probably run into on X that have checked out my book, and I've never pitched it to them. They
Yeah.
just saw the link on my page. We were talking about something not related. We were talking about like the Clash or something, like
Yeah.
music, and then all of a sudden they're on my page, and then I go, "This guy has a book. Add to cart."
Mhm.
Some people know I have a book and they don't give a shit 'cause they're like, "Yeah, I got 3 books," like, um,
Yeah,
it's
Tyler,
I don't
call me
really
when you have 3.
yeah, I've got like I throw the book out there on X sometimes, but I try not to be obnoxious about it. I try to like limit how much I bring it up and post about it, because I really want to use X as a platform where I can connect with like-minded individuals or because I've learned it's a learning thing.
Yeah.
Instagram is more visual, like consumption, more like pictures and stuff. So there, it's a lot of like either marketing stuff, like hey, get this book today, or it's a lot of like insider stuff, like look at what I'm working on, or guess what's coming out soon, or here's a teaser image. And then locally, where I live in Spokane, it's a lot of just going to things and talking to people. I have a lot
Yeah.
of local support. The bookstores here in the city of Spokane have been very kind to me. Um, a lot of people in Spokane have picked up my books and they've given me a lot of support over the years. And I wouldn't have got that support if I hadn't just talked to them and just been like, "Hey, this is something I've been doing. This is
Mhm.
something I made." So I mean, like I said, my marketing it's not probably the best, but it seems to work for now in a way that is I would consider successful on my own terms, but also humbling.
I
Um,
mean, that's
yeah,
that. I think now I'm on episode 12 of the Dadlet Pod, and if there's anything I've found, it's that the publishing experience is incredibly humbling. You
mhm.
gain just a remarkable level of respect for people who write books and who succeed and who write books well. And you also, um, fundamentally, when it comes down to it, everyone I've ever met on the Davlet Pod is not really about money. They just like getting read and like talking about their
That's
work.
my thing. Yeah, like I
You
don't.
know,
I just want to tell stories, man, and share them with people.
it
Like,
it is 100%. It is literally just like people saying, "Look, this is my story. I worked really hard on it. I hope you love it." And
yeah,
it's- fundamentally, um, when I'm on Twitter, when I engage, I'm right there with everybody. Like that's what I want.
yeah.
When the day comes, I have a book out, but it's a history book, and
That's
I've
so cool, man.
published in other areas, but I've never none of my fiction has ever been published. It has been rejected.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. But I think it's just that excitement of getting to talk about your work. So, it, along those lines, themes that go into the assassin or the arsonist, the other A
He could
word.
be an assassin too.
He could be an assassin. I look at the picture on the cover and I think assassin, but what sort of themes are you trying to establish there? What do you want people to get from the Children of Strife series and book one?
With the series, it's kind of hard for me to say, not because I don't. It's already all plotted out. I'm a plotter.
Yeah,
Uh, I with the first book, um, I I'm hesitant to say without because I really don't want to spoil, but I'll try to divulge as much as I can, honestly. So
well,
I
what
would
are the
say that it
themes? What are the themes? Is it family? Is it the individual versus society? You just
I
go
was gonna
from a
say it's
general.
there's a little bit of individual versus society and individual versus self. There's a little bit of coming of age.
Yep.
Um, there's a little bit of um, breaking systems, I guess, or breaking wheels, kind of.
I mean, who doesn't like breaking systems?
There, I think that the what people get, like the takeaway, like you were kind of asking, I think is going to
Yeah,
depend, and this is going to sound weird. I think it's going to depend on the generation that the person that reads it belongs to.
yeah.
I think if a millennial reads Children of Strife, the Arsonist, I would make the claim that I think they would find it a lot more relatable than someone that is perhaps a baby boomer.
Hmm.
Um, in that, not because the characters are young, but because the way I present these themes in the book, I
So there are
think
a
will
bunch of
resonate with
old
them.
people that are holding all the money, and and they're all moving to a tropical paradise to the south. And there are tax collectors coming to all of the young people and hitting them over the head. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
and and Gen X is on the sideline. They're
Gen
watching
X is on the
they're
sideline, just
watching the
like
arsonist burn the world.
they're smoking cigs by the river and
Yeah.
just enjoying themselves, being like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. I've rebuilt that
Yeah.
house 9 times."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that, but yeah, I would say individual versus society. Like the theme, it's hard for me to say, oh, it's this one theme, because I would honestly, and I might be, again, maybe I'm overselling something that's not really there, but intent wise, there's a different theme there for each character. If
Yeah,
we follow 5 characters, I mean, like the theme that you're gonna read in the Lila chapters is not the same theme you're gonna pick up in the Breeze chapters.
yeah,
Um, and I'm not saying that they're like each different books, but it's just these characters are their conflicts and are completely different, right? Of what they're going through. It's not as simple and on the nose as like, oh, this arsonist guy came through and he screwed up something for all 4 of these people and now they're all united by this. It's not like that at all. It's
yeah,
each of these characters is dealing with their own conflict, their own strife, if you
yeah,
will. And they they do end up finding some common ground because the sources of their strife or conflict kind of intersect in a way. Um, there's definitely a lot of like, I mean, it was intentional to make the characters young,
yeah,
right? It always blows people away when they discover how old certain characters in the book are. Like every character in this book, their age is like, of those 5, I should say, is determined in the text. And it always blows people away. They're always like, I didn't think the arsonist was that old. And it makes me kind of like pause for a moment to think like, well,
did you blow it like George did by making everyone too young?
well, I don't. Some people have made it kind of seem like that. I don't think I did. I wanted the arsonist. I wanted the
Yes.
arsonist to seem older than he really is. That's part of his
Yeah.
character. I mean, that's why he doesn't have a normal name. He's kind of elusive and just kind of bizarre. Like, go by the arsonist. You don't act your age.
Yeah.
There's definitely like you're like an old soul or something. But yeah, like there is definitely this huge shocker that almost everybody that I've come in contact with in person, I should say, about the book here in Spokane, that's one of the things I always hear is it was good. I wasn't expecting the arsonist to be blank.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting Lila to, or sorry, not Lila. Bragan is one that always gets brought up. I didn't know Bragan was so young, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was intentional though. I knew what I was doing. I just but maybe because I thought it worked, maybe it doesn't work for some readers. I don't know. We'll see. But that's why I said I think the themes will be easier to pick up by by people depending on their generation. I don't expect someone in their 50s to take away from the book the same thing that a 22-year-old does,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. And I don't know if that sounds like too like
Eh,
uh I don't know.
you know,
Uh,
you
I
know,
guess I'm trying is like maybe
it's
that's obvious. Maybe that's like, oh, that's every book. But there's a lot of books I've read, like Watership Down, where I've
yeah.
had the same takeaway as somebody that's in their 60s. You know,
Yeah.
same thing with
Well,
like
I
a book
mean,
like Moby
it's
Dick.
sort of primordial Watership
Yeah,
Down. It's sort of this natural rage and
right.
warring, sort of naturalistic perception. But to that extent, you know, it's tough to know. You're a millennial, I assume, like
I
myself.
am. Yes.
I'm on the elder side. I'm what's often referred to as an analog millennial.
An analog,
And
yeah.
yes, an analog millennial. And of course the irony of is that I don't know how long you've been poking around literary Twitter, but analog millennials who are now in their 40s are considered the young guns of of male literature,
Yes, they are.
which is
Hilarious.
I feel old, but at the same time, Mitchner was 40 when he got started, and so to that extent, look, you've at least got two generations behind you
Yeah.
that are almost definitely going to feel that inspiration and that feeling. So let's get to um, submarine talk because I'm going to be honest. This is, and you brought up Friends earlier, and one of the funniest episodes of Friends is when the Charlie Sheen from the nuclear sub
Oh,
shows up and to have his week off, which he flies out to have with Phoebe.
yep.
And they both get chicken pox together.
Hmm.
And then at the end, Ross, who is, I think, dating Rachel in that season, is sitting at
Probably. It's
the
Gerald and
yes,
Yennefer.
at the Central Park, and he's asking Charlie Sheen about what he does on the submarine. Charlie Sheen says, "That's classified. That's classified. That's
Yeah.
classified." And Ross says, "Ah, that was really fun learning about submarines."
It's gotten a lot better or worse depending on who you talk to. Whenever
Yeah.
people ask me questions about submarine life that I can't answer, I always recommend them a book, and they roll their eyes at me because they think I'm just like
Oh
doing a
yeah.
cop out. There's a book called Blind Man's Bluff that you
Yeah.
have to read when you become well, at least I shouldn't say this. There might be a submariner that's listening that's like, well, I didn't have to read it. Well, everyone that I went to submarine school with had to read this book,
Yes.
and it
Yeah.
was a great book. It's called Blind Man's Bluff, and the, the importance of this book is that it's a Cold War narrative. It's not fictional though. It's talking about real
Yeah.
things that happened during the Cold War. Um, the guy that wrote it, when the book came out, was seized by government officials because
There you go.
they were like, how did you know all of this shit? And
Blind
he
man's bluff. Dad
he
lit right
yeah,
there.
blind man's bluff. He was innocent. He was found innocent and released because he wasn't a submariner and he didn't steal any classified documents. He was picked out and selected by a crew of submariners, or members of a crew of submarine, of
Yes.
they selected him and they had him meet up with them at a pub, I guess is how the story goes, like a bar, and they told him everything word of mouth with no
Yeah.
recording, and he had to just basically typewrite
Write
it.
it down. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as they talked, and they did not give him their real identities, and when the crew, so when they released this author, they went looking for the ghostwriters,
Yeah.
and they pulled that whole crew, and nobody in the crew would say a word. They all took a pact of secrecy. They took punishments as a crew. Like nobody on the crew would rat out who was involved. um
Yeah.
it's a very interesting story because you grow up, at least I did, with the Cold War was a war without a single shot fired, but then you hear some of these submariner stories, like they were dogfighting under Antarctica. That's freaking awesome. Why didn't we hear about
Oh
this?
yeah, man.
Like
There's so much cool. Were you in an attack sub or an ISBN?
I was in a boomer sub. I was in the Ohio class, um, the one that carries the big bombs that end the world.
Yeah, so part of the Trident missile system.
Yeah, the Trident missile subs. I don't know how much. Like, I'm trying to. Yeah, you know what they are. I don't know. I've thrown words like that around. People are like, "What the hell is the
Yeah,
Trident
yeah.
missile?
So the
Is it a
Trident.
missile with three prongs?"
Okay, okay. So to the dadlit community, your host is a naval historian and United States Armed Forces historian. The Trident missile system is a collection of submarines that are nuclear powered that stay underwater for, I want to say, 8 months or longer.
It depends.
It
I mean,
depends.
I would say
Most of them leave out of Bremerton, Washington, or out of either New Haven or Providence. I think it's New Haven on the East Coast.
it's somewhere in Georgia. I don't remember
Oh,
because
oh, okay, okay.
I was out of Bangor, Washington.
Oh, okay,
Um,
yes.
but
And
somewhere in Georgia there's another base, but it's mainly Washington.
yes. And they ring the bell, and then they go under and they don't come back up for months at a time. And so when we talk about the SALT missile treaty and we talk about the nuclear missile silos that are all over the American West and Arkansas, etc., all of those are actually rather inconsequential because the bulk of our attack fleet is the Trident missile system, which is all underwater, all hiding at any given time and a very cool system, but of course, very top secret. And I have never been on one. I only know what normies know who are above those. The alternative is, I believe, the Orlando class submarines. So you were on an
Um,
Ohio ISBN, but the alternative is the attack submarines, which are not Trident missile subs. They are the ones that go out and hunt ships and other submarines.
yes, they're more aggressive. They don't hide, they hunt.
Yeah, they hunt.
The one
Yes.
I was on was all about hiding. There's actually a short documentary on YouTube that is literally the ship I was on, the USS
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, that you can find on YouTube if you're listening. That'll give you a pretty good visual and description of what that life is like and what that ship is like. They
Yep.
divulge quite a bit of information. I was surprised when I watched it. I was like,
Yep.
"Hey, that's I've been there." And they're showing that, like um, it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think that's the one where they sent the crew down with them, and then they
Yes,
just heavily edited it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they heavily edited it, but there's still things where you're like, I don't know how they were allowed to show that, but I guess they were.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
So to those interested in this program, Tyler would have been underwater for probably 6 months at the most.
the boat I was on, the crew before the crew that I was on that inherited the boat, I guess they set the
Yeah,
world record for longest uh, deployment.
underwater.
Yeah, longest submerged deployment
Yeah. And
for that class of submarine, anyway.
so you can imagine, by the way, this is the next book you're going to have to write because
People always make that joke. They're like, "You should
yeah,
write a submarine book." I'm like, it would be
yeah.
like, what am I going to write about? What am I going to be able to say? You know?
I mean, to my mind, going underwater with the same group of people for 6 months, it's a fascinating concept. The only thing comparable to it is obviously when you go up in the space station, right? And
Yeah,
the
it is a
space
lot like
station,
space.
yeah, it's a lot like space, except space is constant discomfort, right? There's
Of course.
perpetual physical discomfort, which is
Yeah.
one of these things that no one ever talks about space. They're all like, "Oh, it'd be great to just float around,"
No.
without talking about the repercussions of all your organs
Yep.
floating around constantly and the fact that like moisture and water pools behind your eyeballs and you have a headache
Ugh.
all the time. It's interesting, but being underwater for 6 months to me would be a stretch. You wouldn't be able to talk me into it.
It's not for everyone. That's why they're constantly short staffed.
Yeah.
There's less people that want to go into submarines than there are people that want to go into like Navy SEALs or Green Berets, like special forces,
Yeah.
which may not surprise some people, but those are like combat roles. That's like
Yeah.
you're killing people and you are an adrenaline junkie, basically, kind of like it's cool. But um, I think one of the things that was really interesting to me, I learned some fun facts when I was going through the whole submarine program. I didn't know this
Are you
for the
allowed to
longest
say your
time.
specialty, by the way?
Yeah, I was a machinist mate.
Oh, okay, great. So for
I was part of
everyone,
yeah.
oh, you can describe it. You can describe it as, yeah,
I worked with the engineering division in on the boat, um, doing auxiliary things. I guess. I mean, I would say my job was important, but it was like you basically create oxygen for the crew.
yeah.
Hydrolysis. You bring in seawater and you electrolyze it. Basically, you hit it with an electrical current to create
What's
oxygen.
done with the hydrogen after you produce the O2? Are you allowed to
Um,
say? You can't. If you can't
it's
say,
a
don't tell
I
me.
don't know. I don't know what I can say. I don't know. Because the things that I've seen and done are still classified. I don't
Yeah.
not enough time has passed. I don't know if that how I would assume that it's definitely handled in a environmentally safe way, an
Yeah,
ethical
yeah.
way.
Well, that's why it's interesting to me because of course, if what you're basically doing is running seawater through
Yeah.
an electrical current
Yep.
to separate the hydrogen and produce O2,
Yeah.
which is then used for the crew because of course they're underwater for 6 months and the nuclear reactor on board the sub is doing that process. So it's like mini desalinization, right? Like
Yeah.
submarines are are almost they're closed systems that in a lot of ways replicate what every person who wants renewable energy says they
Yes.
actually want.
We I tell people this all the time and they
Yes.
never believe me, but the air I breathed in the submarine was cleaner than the air I breathed in Seattle.
Oh yeah,
It's so
it's
sanitized.
astonishingly clean.
And it's
Uh,
it's it's super clean to the point where they just did away with this, but when I was underway, you could smoke inside the submarine.
oh yeah, yeah.
They
No,
don't get there's the
those were
CO2
the days.
filters. The filters are so powerful. We could literally be sitting here having a conversation face to face. I could be smoking, and you wouldn't even get sick. Like it wouldn't even impact you
Well, I
negatively.
mean, this is the benefit of having a nuclear reactor just
Yes,
servicing what a crew of 140. How many
some
people?
usually it's a lot less than that.
Yeah,
I want to say mine was like 108. I want to
108.
say I
Yeah,
somebody if anyone I cannot actually confirm that number, but it sounds right though.
yeah,
108 sounds that number came straight to my head. I feel like that has to be accurate somehow. But
yeah.
um
Yeah. So Hyman Rickover, obviously the father of the nuclear submarine force. The by the way, the people listening to the Dad Lit Pod are getting me at my premiere
I think it's cool,
tonight.
man. I think it's so cool that you're a professional historian. I think it's cool. I really do because I'm a huge history buff. I love historical stuff. When you were talking earlier about you were talking earlier about like how an event happens and all these different perspectives that it hurt it right.
Yes. Yeah.
That is such an important thing to me in writing. That is something that I wanted to capture with my books. That's something that is important and meaningful to me because my favorite books that I read as a young adult all touched on those things
Yeah.
for the most part. So I mean, like that is, yeah, that was really cool hearing you say that because that's important to me too. And like I said, I'm a big history buff. That on the topic of submarines, if you still want to talk about that, is some fun history stuff I learned about that was really really fascinating.
Well, give it to me. Give me your submarine facts.
Some fun facts.
Yeah, give me
There
some
were
fun facts that you're allowed to tell me. I
yeah, these
completely
are old. These
understand.
are old things, but they're
Yeah, yeah,
interesting. There were more submariners that died in the Pacific than Marines that died on D-Day in
that's true.
Normandy,
Yes.
and nobody ever talks about that, and
Well,
very few people know it. I knew you would know that, but
I know that. Well, the other thing that no one wants to talk about is that a lot of them were shot by their own torpedoes,
yep,
which was the failure of early torpedoes in World
yep,
War II, and the refusal of the Navy Department to listen to submariner crews who reported, I believe, I mean, if you go to the National World War II Museum,
yeah,
I believe there's the Bakuna experience, and the
hmm,
Bakuna shot itself with its own torpedo.
yep.
And so torpedoes, I think, are a really misunderstood thing because I don't think people know that when a torpedo goes out of
People
the
think they're like
boat,
heat seeking or some
yeah, yeah,
shit.
they don't know that there's a line attached to that torpedo. There's a wire
Yep.
directing that torpedo. And because you obviously you can't um, the ability to send sound waves through water. I mean, you could attempt to do that, but you'd give up your position, you'd give up
Yeah,
everyone's
it's not
position,
worth it.
and it's really not worth it. There's just so much fascinating submarine stuff.
Oh yeah,
This
it's
is the
cool.
next question. Can I get you back for a Hunt for Red October discussion for the Dadlet pod? Because I'm looking to do some
Yeah,
topical things, and I'm
sure.
looking for. I mean, I know I'm not going to ever ask you to say anything you cannot say.
No, I will say this about the Hunt for October movie.
Yes.
I so my father was a detective and a law enforcement. You know, he's involved in law enforcement.
Oh, well, we could
Um,
talk about that too.
he
You've got all
he
sorts of interesting
he
things, Tyler.
he in California, he was a very respected detective in law enforcement. I won't and I when I was growing up, he did not like watching movies and shows that portrayed anything to do with law enforcement or cops because it was very
Yes.
immersion breaking for him. Because like there'd be like some really cool movie like Training Day, you know, and I'd be like, oh, we got to
Yeah.
watch this. This movie's great, and he's just like the whole time he's just grinding his teeth like this is stupid. That they would never, and he
Yeah.
makes comments the whole time, and I hated it as a kid because I never understood it. But
Yeah. My
then
dad hates lawyer movies other than my cousin Vinny.
oh well, yeah. That
Yeah.
cousin Vinny's is great. I could see why.
Yes.
But
But tell me,
I never understood it though. And then I went into the Navy and I got out and I watched The Hunt for Red October and I watched Battleship and all this. And I'm just like, what? Like, this is not accurate at all. This is creating. There is a movie I watched. Oh my god! It made me so mad that I blocked it out. But it had he just passed away. Help me out here. The actor, old actor, he just passed away in Arizona or New Mexico.
oh, Gene
Oh,
Hackman. You're
Gene
talking
Hackman,
about Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide. Thank you.
Yes.
That movie pisses me off. It, I can't watch it and enjoy it, but it is such an like. And when he passed away, that for some reason that is like the movie that everyone wanted to post clips about
Yeah.
on the internet. Like, oh, remember Gene Hackman and Crimson Tide? I'm just like, God, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I'm more of like I'm thinking of him as like Lex Luthor or like the coach in like The Replacements with Keanu Reeves and stuff. And that everyone's talking about this movie. I'm just like, I don't like that movie. It's not.
Yes.
It's not legit at all.
What's the
Because
movie?
you can't make a submarine movie really. It's hard. Like
Oh yeah, because you can't talk about what's on the submarine. Well, you can make a World War II submarine movie.
World War II subs make sense, but like the
Yeah,
problem is when anybody wants to tackle something with World War II, they want dudes fighting Nazis, and that's not what.
yeah.
Believe it or not, I mean, you know this, but listeners, there's that's not really what a lot of the submariners in the U.S.
Oh
did.
no,
We
no,
fought a
no.
lot of the
The
Japanese.
we fought the Japanese.
Yeah,
For those uninitiated, you know, I'm gonna get into this at some point because I am a World War II historian, and um, at least one of my published books is on the history of World War II. Uh, the American submarine um, force was predominantly in the Pacific. And
hmm
the reason was because for all the brilliance of the Japanese Navy, they had no anti-submarine capabilities.
they did. The Germans did though, and that's why
The
it was
Germans
not.
did. Yes, yes. The Japanese had no anti-submarine capabilities. And to that effect, the United States Navy experienced what the Germans would describe in the spring of 1942 and the spring of 1943 as the happy time in the Atlantic. But for the American submarine force in the Pacific, they wiped out the Japanese merchant
Yeah, we
navy.
bullied them pretty
Oh
bad.
yeah, yeah. It completely destroyed them very quickly because the Japanese did not focus on destroyers and did not focus on anti-submarine capabilities.
No,
Uh, yeah.
there was one famous submarine though in the Atlantic, and I say famous because it is like a Hall of Famer story at the submarine school in Connecticut. Is Have you ever heard the story of the USS Flucky?
No, no.
Okay, so submariners in World War II, they would always paint, like a line for like how many ships they've destroyed, with a line through when you get to five.
Yep.
Um, well, the USS Flucky got deployed to go help out with the Atlantic because there was a bridge somewhere on the coast, I want to say in France, where there's a wooden bridge that the Germans built so that a train could go across this cliff for
Yeah.
faster ease of moving goods. And the US couldn't get their like frigate, their destroyers, like they couldn't get near it. Plane because Germany was protecting it like crazy with planes.
Yes.
Um, so they devised a plan to bring a submarine over to the Atlantic to deal with it. And so the USS Flucky got chosen, and they were pissed about it because they're like, "This is a suicide mission. We're going to the Atlantic. It's the Germans. They have anti. We're going to be sitting ducks because we have no one to cover us. We're going to get deleted." And they got out there. They were actually lucky. They didn't get spotted. They launched a torpedo at the beam of this bridge as they had to sit there though for a long time, almost running out of fuel the time when the train was going to, because they wanted them to not just take out the bridge but the train with it. So
Yes.
they had to sit there and with a periscope hoping the German planes don't see them. And they timed it just right, and they took out the bridge, and then the train couldn't stop and it went into the ocean and they took it out. And
Oh, it's so
when
beautiful.
they went back to the Pacific, they didn't have any stripes on their hull. All these other guys are like, oh yeah, we took out 7 Japanese ships. Look at all these stripes. They're sitting there in I don't think it was Pearl Harbor. Might have been San Diego. I'd have to. It's been a while, man. I wasn't prepared, but
Yes.
they. Anyways, how the story goes is they got kind of not mad that they didn't have that they were kind of getting teased at not having any stripes. They were like, you know what, we did something cooler, and they drew a Jolly Roger, what a Jolly Roger like with the skull with the bones,
Yes.
but the bones are train tracks. So there, the USS Flucky had a Jolly Roger on the hull of the ship of a skull with 2 train tracks behind it, because they were like, we took out a train in the
Yep.
Atlantic. We don't need stripes, like we're so it and they, that crew ended up surviving the whole war and became like a Hall of Famer, just legendary. They're still talked about to this day, just legends, man.
Yep.
What they did was super lucky and super cool, and also just funny.
Yep.
So yeah, that story stuck with me. I thought that was super funny back in the day.
Well, Tyler, we've I could talk submarines with you literally all night. I'm gonna
Yeah,
be honest
yeah.
with you.
World War
I
II for
could, I
sure.
could, I'm going to have you back. We're going to
Yeah.
have to discuss, I'm sorry, but we're
No.
going to have to discuss uh, Dad Lit masterpiece, The Hunt for Red October. And we will have a whole episode devoted for it. But I'm going to let you go for tonight because it's Friday, and I'm sure your wife and your handicapped dogs want to spend time with you. You want to
Yeah.
you want to plug your book?
Yeah, yeah. If you're still listening, I appreciate you listening, and thank you again, Daniel, for having me on your show. Um,
Thanks for coming on.
yeah, I hope that I didn't spoil too much about the Children of Strife, the Arsonist book.
No,
That
no one has any
uh,
idea what is going to happen in this book. I
I think that
promise.
if you give it a chance, you'll be surprised. I tell people, I mean, one of the biggest things that has been a selling point, surprisingly, for people on the internet is how short it is. Um, that
That's
seems
an
to be really
interesting.
appealing. So if anything that I've said on this podcast about the book didn't catch your attention, perhaps the fact that it's less than 300 pages will, and you'll be like, oh, what do I have
Yeah,
to
it's
lose? It's only 266 pages. It's a short read. I could read that on a plane.
yes.
So yeah, I'd love for you to check it out. It's available on Amazon. I have a link to it on my social media, on my X account.
Yep, and I will link to it in the show notes as I do with all the authors we have on.
Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, but yeah, I hope that you'll give it a chance. And if you have any questions about it, I'm pretty active on X, so feel free
Yeah,
to message me on X.
what's your ex name, Tyler?
My X name is at tar underscore Kirk. So TAR underscore Kirk KIRK. It's
And
my
that'll be in the show notes. Tyler, thank you
yes.
so much for
Yes,
coming on and helping me learn about submarines, which
I had a
is
blast, Daniel. I like I said, I could talk about World War
uh,
II and books and themes. We could talk forever, man.
look,
We'd be here all weekend.
I'm going to insist. We're going to be having, I might as well announce this because I'm going to make Tyler participate. We're going to be doing some Dadlit book club stuff coming up. I want to do Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. And now that I know I have a Submariner, uh, I'd love to do Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. So if you're willing to come back,
All right, all right, all
we will
right.
set it out. We will set it out. It's a Russian sub. You weren't on a Russian sub.
Yeah, no, and it's and the irony is that submarine in the Hunt for October was so historically bad by design. It was so loud. It was the easiest submarine to find in the history of submarines. So,
Yes.
but Tom Clancy, I don't think had that information at the time. But
No,
uh,
I'm sure he didn't.
I will. I'll try to just put on a different hat for that one.
Well, what do you put on the character hat?
Yeah, I'll
You'd
put
be
on the
like,
character
look, I
hat.
love these characters. I'm particularly enamored with the idea of a Soviet jumping ship because his wife couldn't get into the state hospital. I love that about that book. But anyway, we'll
It
get
is
into
a
that.
good story, but yeah,
Yes, it's a good story.
cool.
Although, I mean, when you think about it, what's his name? Jack Ryan is one of the most milquetoast characters ever. Does he even have a personality? I don't know.
That's definitely a question for of the ages. Like I don't know. Like he's yeah,
I mean, John Krasinski made him even less interesting, but we'll
which
get
is
into it,
yeah.
which is crazy because he's already like completely pointless and sort of like boring. Uh, but anyway, we'll get into that at a future episode.
Cool.
Tyler, so great to have you on. Go out and buy Tyler's book, The Arsonist, The Children of Strife series, book one, and have a great time. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dadlit Pod. Good night.